We look for the narrative. That means that 99.9% of the time, things are going just fine or something is gray. However, when we have a narrative like you're a bad person or I don't like you or you talk too much or you're mean or you're this or you're that, when you go for these narratives, what happens is your brain will only entrap the information to prove that you are right. And so every time your spouse is angry at you, they become your angry spouse. Every time your child is spoiled, you have a spoiled child. You know, we go into these narratives because we're lazy. We are creepy, lazy people. We love our little narratives because when we live in our narratives, everything becomes easier. I can just filter you through that, and I'm only going to have to hear the one thing I need to hear, which is that you're a total jerk. And so, as we go through life, we live in our narratives. We have bias research. We go online looking for the news that will validate our perspectives. We look for anything that will validate the perspective that we need to believe about life. And that's how we are as creatures because we worry and we have fears. And in our fears, we are always looking out for what we fear the most. And so that fear has a filter, and that filter is down to the very minute details that we need to pay attention to. That my boss is a total jerk. That my friend has betrayed me. You know, as we go down these narratives, our life becomes narrower and narrower and narrower. And that mental filtering in psychological language is called cognitive distortion. And it can really drive you to anxiety and depression. You know, no one's going to like me. I can never do anything right. I'm an ugly person. I'm fat. You know, the world is a terrible place and it's getting worse every day. You know, we have this thing called the Trump derangement syndrome, and that is a narrative that is psychotic. I mean, people are just psychotic, or they're psychotic about the wokies, which the wokes have a good reason for that. But, you know, they obsess over a lot of things, you know. And what we really have to understand, the news is a great example of filtering if you want to see what that is. It mostly pays attention to the stories that exhibit their point of view. Mental filtering can help you fall out of love with your spouse, which destroys your children's life if you have children with them. And you notice only the bad things that they do that reinforces your perspective. And we also disregard, minimize, brush aside anything that doesn't fit our narrative. We don't even listen. And this is the one thing that all people need is to be heard. Respect. Respect is listening. And unfortunately, if you want to make people angry, there's two real ways that the pathways to get someone to anger and rage. And that is number one, stop listening to them and only hear what you want to hear, which are narratives. And, you know, narratives are loved by borderline personalities and narcissistic personalities, antisocial personalities, conduct disorder children. They all love, you know, antisocial personalities. They all love narratives because they have to be right. And boy, do they find all kinds of research and evidence to prove that they are the gods of the planet. And so we have to really understand that these narratives are very destructive. Because once again, if you want to get to rage and anger, all you have to do is disrespect someone. Disrespect is not being heard. Take their voice away and you will destroy them. If you're a woman married to a man and you want to completely demasculate him, the best way to do it is to stop listening to him and only hear the bullshit you believe in. And women love this one. They just suck it up left and right. They love their narratives. And then they go on social media and reinforce it all day long. And they go down that path and go down that path and they obsess and obsess and obsess. And they find that granular detail, no matter what is done right, to just show what a total jerk you really are. And it's sad. It's sad because in that you get rage and anger all day long, every day, and resentment. And then no sexual relationship, no intimacy, no friendship. because you have to live in your narratives. The other way, if you want to know, to get somebody to anger or rage is fear and creating fear. And there's a way to create fear in marriage when you stop listening to your spouse, because now your spouse is really afraid of who's in charge of the relationship, because narrative people love to be in charge of all relationships because they have to match their narratives, especially the ones that love alcohol and drugs. They love their narratives. They have to hide behind that so you would avoid paying attention to their addictions. If you can't see anything positive, your thoughts are going to lie to you, because we are all good and bad. We are all good and bad. Mental filtering makes us more anxious, but anxiety makes us filter more. Because what is anxiety? It's fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of what you think of me. Fear that you'll never understand me. And if you really want to know what creates relationships, it's not acknowledgement of your feelings, it's understanding of your feelings. It is understanding and respecting your meanings in life, the things that you care about. That is how you get to know a human being. Unfortunately, people that are lazy, narrative based people, which most people are very narrow and very sad, and they call themselves philosophers and higher thinkers, and they think they're the smartest people on the planet, but they're dumber than rat shit, because all they do is reinforce their narratives. And we're filled with that in our society. We are filled with that because people rely on social media and the stupid legacy news so badly that they grab onto that crap, and that just takes them down a path of being psychotic. We can take intentional action and change how we think. But we first have to realize that we are hanging on to lies and what the distorted reality is doing for us. And what the distorted reality is we all love to simplify everything down to black and white thinking. And people that are black and white thinkers lack intellectuality, lack wisdom, lack intellect, lack the ability to understand things fully and completely, because they want to label everything so they can just hum along through life and listen for their narratives and never have to really listen. And unfortunately, they do this to their children, even lesser so usually than most other people, but they do. They do it to their children. And then they say, well, I don't have a favorite. Well, yeah, you do, because you labeled your child as sensitive or overbearing or temperamental or whatever you've labeled them. And that's how you see your child. And your child has to deal with you all the way up until they become an adult. And it's sad. It's sad because that narrative will carry with them the rest of their lives. When something is actually dangerous, like an abusive spouse, it can be helpful to forget, any sweet moments with them, any kind moments where, the thing is if you got, let's say, a verbally abusive spouse, one of the ways that you can change that person is understanding that they actually have a positive to them. And I'm not saying you should stay around these abusive people. I'm not saying that. I would much rather all people get away from abuse as fast as possible. It's called boundaries. If you want to talk to me like this, here's the consequence. Here's what's going to happen. I am not going to take what you're going to say to me. I do not put up with that. And guess where the door is? It's right there. And guess what I will have to do if you continue doing this? These are boundaries. Yes, we need to have those. But on the other side of it is, when someone is being rather aggressive, what we might want to do is also, another technique is to say, I think you're a better person than this. I was hoping you would be a better person. I was hoping you would not be like this. I know you don't always talk like this. I know you have better intellect than the way you're coming across. I know that you are not quite all this person. I'm hoping that you'll go back to the better person that you are, rather than the crap you're delivering me right now. There's ways that you can coach people, especially your children, to try to help them be the better person. rather than standing there and allowing someone who doesn't realize or maybe has lost their mind and reminding them that they're a better person. Sometimes that is a better way to go before you go down the path of calling the police or acting like a crazy person or becoming, embracing your victim themes. Everybody gets frustrated. Everybody overstates their point. And here's why people overstate their point. And narrative people love people that overstate their point. And overstating your point is somebody that starts name calling, starts saying very harsh words to you, starts saying very severe things about you. What they're really trying to do by doing that is get your attention because they think you suck as a listener and they have to resort to Broadway performances and opera arias to get your attention. And most people do suck at listening. And if you do suck at listening, you're going to hear a lot of harsh things said to you. And you're going to wonder, why do people talk to me like that? Well, they talk to you like that because you're a piece of crap who can't listen because all you care about is your narratives. And narrative people have trouble listening. And as they have trouble listening, which is called respect, they have a difficult life because they have to entrap everything into their narrative beliefs. Most of the time, we think of mental filtering as only seeing the bad, but mental filtering can also go to delusional thinking. And that is thinking their abusive spouse is a wonderful human being. Oh, I know they're a better person. Oh, they can do, and we do this with our kids, by the way. We blow off their negative behavior rather than give them consequences. So mental filtering can go into the other delusional way where you delude yourself to only collect evidence that your child is a wonderful, intelligent, respectful human being, or that your spouse is a wonderful, intelligent, respectful human being when they also often exhibit a piece of trash behavior that you need to address rather than ignore, because narratives make us ignore the toxic. Toxic people can take your life down, and we have to be very careful about the level of toxicity we are willing to take in, both positive and negative. They do great damage to us all. Mental filtering makes us depressed and anxious because they develop expectations that you are this or you are that. And when we have expectations, we stop negotiating life. And life is one continuous negotiation. And if you want to help filter someone else's behavior, the best way to do that is to say, hey, you know what? I would prefer you treated me like this. I would prefer that you lowered your voice. I would prefer that you and I could be able to talk rather than yell at each other. I would prefer we were willing to hear each other. Now, if we start working with a preference, things get a lot safer, a lot less anxious, and a lot less depressed. Because when it comes to human behavior, we are we have the ability to teach each other how we communicate and how we want to be communicated to. That is called respect. And that means a preference. I prefer. And if we could integrate that into our language rather than these rigid people who go through expectation after expectation. I expect you to do this. I expect you to do this. I expect you to have sex. I expect you to do all these forced things. These expectations people, they think they're God on the planet. They're not. And they don't even realize they're doing it because they've been doing it so long. That is a very narcissistic trait. And if you want to be less of a turd, then try preferences, because preferences teach people how to love you. Mental filtering creates divides, and it makes us see only the best of our, let's say, political candidate or certain people that we have affirmations for. And it only makes us see the worst in the other tribes that don't like our candidate or don't like our person. And we have to be really careful about that. We have to be really careful, because here's the deal that made our society wonderful. Back in the old days, not that they were perfect, but back when people used to look at people as a majority, as most people are more good than they are bad. Most people are more right than they are wrong. People weren't filtered through their tribal beliefs, because as they congregated into cities, they realized they were all very different and they had to work together. And by doing that, people were able to communicate. You are more good than you are bad. You are more right than you are wrong. And we are all willing to hear each other. That would create a much better world. Unfortunately, people nowadays are all into their narrative so much that they will eliminate free speech in this world. And it's very sad. It's very sad. It feels good to be on the right team. That's a great thing to be on the right team. But in the long run, it can make things worse because the right team can think they're always right and they're not always right. The deal is any team is going to be wrong because they're already biased because they're a team. So filtering, it feels so good, but what it does is it lacks people's ability to see people as individuals, to respect people have opinions, and to understand that the vast majority of the population of the planet Earth are very gray and very center. They're not extremists, but extremists have such loud voices and loud narratives and profound research to prove how correct they are because they are so psychotic that they have to prove themselves correct, that we only listen to them because they put so much into the need to be right. They put so much to reinforce their perspectives. And that's all the news is nowadays. It's not unbiased, it is completely biased. And it's really sad because if you plug into that garbage, you're going to become garbage. We are to respect and understand each other. That is the deal. But if you got these crazy extremist people in your life, and God knows the wokey wokies are going to call anything MAGA an extremist, and the MAGAs are going to call the wokey wokies extremists. They're extremists on both sides, but most of these people, most of them actually land somewhere in the middle. And we can find middle ground, and we need to find middle ground because we are a society. And as a society, we need to find common sense and reason. Unfortunately, the psychotics took over our government in the last 4 years with Joe Biden, and they took us down such a radical path that now we have to right the ship back to what's called common sense. And it takes, the elephant in the rooms to get that done because the wokey wokies are so psychotic that they cannot stand the idea that we're going to take their power away because they finally got it and they were ready to destroy our country and ready to destroy anything that goes against the transy or the LGBTQ or the Black Lives Matter. They can't stand the fact as advocates that they have been professional advocates that they have lost their opinions. And we got to get back to reason because these narratives have destroyed the fabric of what has built a most beautiful country. All right, let's take a break and we'll come right back. Welcome back, everybody. All right, we're talking about mental filtering, the narratives, how they destroy relationships. You know, there's a lot of things that we can do to eliminate narratives. One of the things is to focus, and that is to be able to be more present with the people in your life. And by doing that, you kind of have to take a breath, slow down, and try to put your life in a place that's safe and calm. You can do that in your mind. And what's really important is that we become really, really good listeners. And that means that we try to understand what is meaningful to the people who we care about and the people we communicate with. And by doing that, we begin to understand them. And when we start to understand another human being, we develop relationships. One of the things that truly is the most attractive thing about any human being on this planet, no matter how they look, how they act, it is this one thing. And if you can do this, you start to counteract narratives. And that is gratitude, gratefulness. Gratefulness requires us to be fully present in the moment that we're in, rather than living in a narrative from the past or a narrative about the future. And if you let yourself sit with a compliment and take a compliment and say thank you, even if you don't believe it, you are becoming a much more kind and grateful person instead of these turds that sit around and go, no, not that. I don't believe I'm that nice. No, I'm not. People that don't take compliments are so crappy because all they do is make the other person feel dejected and have to work harder just to give their narcissistic human being more compliments that get rejected. It's crazy. Narcissists don't like compliments because they want you to go, oh yeah, keep it up, keep telling me how great I am. They're such turds. If they could just say thank you, that would be so gracious and grateful and wonderful. Make a daily habit of seeing the good that you do. Don't just suppress your wins. Many people with depression or anxiety don't notice positive things that happen. And it's really important. If you cannot think of one positive thing in your life, start making a journal and try to figure it out so you can have something tangible to look at, to know that there are things in this world that are positive, including in your gloomy little life. Look around you. See if you can find someone who seems to see the world much more clearly. A friend, a therapist, a parent, anybody. Consider including their perspective instead of your own perspective into how you see the world and how you decide to see the world. If you think about it, all you have to do, especially these people in this world they're traumatized and emotionally detached. If you're traumatized and emotionally detached human being, here's what you need to do to try to heal. Pick an emotion and assign it to an event or to a child or to another friend and go to that event with that emotion in mind. And that emotion, hopefully, if it's positive, like being grateful or being kind or being inquiring about other people or caring about other people, if you even fake it, just go and use that emotion to try to implant yourself and be a part of something. These people that walk around emotionally detached from life, if you're doing that, you're a waste of time. Your entire life is about coping. Nobody wants to deal with that crap. They don't even have sex in a romantic or sensual way. They're just sitting there, ooh, come on, wake up, pick an emotion and go into a friendship. Pick an emotion, go to church, pick an emotion, go to school, and interact with people with that emotion, that empathy, that compassion, that caring, the listening, with questions, inquiries, and see what that buys you. Go with gratitude and see what it buys you. You have it in you, pull it out and use it. And stop sitting around with your traumatized victim themes to excuse yourself from living. You also need to choose media sources that don't use extremes or emotional reasoning or labeling people or tell one side of the story. And that's really hard to find. It's really hard to find that. You have to intentionally look and understand both sides of the story to see others as multifaceted humans instead of labels of you're a terrible person or you're a good person or you're an extreme. There are extreme people that deserve labels because they're psychotic, but the deal is you want to look for people in the middle. The middle. That is where the human being is. We are all here to survive. We are all trying to be resilient. We are here trying to make the best of our life. We are resourceful people, and there are resources in every part of every human being. And the deal is, you want to surround yourself with people that are resilient and survivors. If you're a depressed person, if you're an anxious person, you're going to want narratives, and you're going to want to surround yourself with narratives. Oh, everybody hates me. Oh, I can't get out of bed. Oh, they want to fire me at work. Oh, I know this person can't stand me. Come on, get over yourself. Wake up, live in the moment, be grateful, be kind, care. If you don't care, fake it. Fake it till you make it. That's kind of how it works. Sometimes you just have to go and do it and get off your butt and actually function and then see what happens. But people are so lazy. They just sit in their crap and their victim themes and they suck the life out of every soul in their life because they don't feel like it. Well, if you don't feel like it, that's not how you live. And guess what? If you're dropped in the middle of the jungle, you'd be dead. People have to be resilient. That means we have to have a will to survive. That is who you want to surround yourself with. These duds that sit around waiting for a feeling, let them sit around and wait for a feeling. But you don't have to do that. You can pick an emotion and move yourself out of it, even if you're faking it, because that's what it takes. You have got to put yourself on the right track. It doesn't feel good to survive, but we still have to survive. That is what it takes as a human being. We got to dig down deeper. But we are so safe and so lazy. And we need to live like a third world country where you have to no other choice but to be happy. You have no other choice but to pick a better attitude. You have no other choice but to be resilient if you want to live. And if you don't want to live, you can die really quick because nobody's going to be looking out for you. And so we people that live in these safe societies where everything's handed to you, like during COVID, when everything was given to these idiots, they just sit around and they take everything for granted, including their jobs, until they can't even function. And now their old fart parents have to wipe their ass at their homes and take care of them. And they sleep around there and they can't even buy their own home because I'm depressed or I'm sad or, they're idiots. Wake up, grab your life, and step into it and stop looking for narratives to reinforce your victim themes because victims love narratives. If you see yourself as genuine, authentic, or unfiltered, even if you do, it's part of your human nature to understand that we manipulate. And you want to be very cautious and careful about what you manipulate. If you and your partner are always, you're in your spouse or your partner, and you're always arguing, there's a good chance that both of you have two different narratives and have never taken the time to understand the meaning of what you're arguing about to each other before you discuss how to compromise. If you're going on a vacation and one of you wants to lay on the beach and the other one wants to see the sights, guess what? You have two different meanings. Negotiate based on the meanings, and you will find that you will come to a conclusion. We have to understand that meanings are emotional. Meanings are not factual. And if you want to resent a meaning, you're going to resent a person. People have different meanings. It's okay to have meanings. It's okay, but you don't have to be around them all the time if you don't like their meanings. Just let them know I don't like how you're interpreting things. But, we can meet on something else that we do have a similar meaning. We can find a middle ground if we understand each other's meanings. That's how people work. But people love to alienate based on their narratives because they want to live in their narratives. And there's some people that will alienate their spouses, they will alienate their siblings, they will alienate their parents, they'll alienate their friends, they will alienate all kinds of people for no other reason but they have to live in their stupid narrative and reinforce it every day of their lives. This is a complex existence, us human beings. We are fleeting. That means our friendships have chapters. They're not your whole life. Every friendship has importance at different times and not at other times. Don't take it personal. Marriages ebb and flow based on your life and based on your attitude and based on your level of depression and anxiety. But if you really want to connect with other people, number one, you're going to have to get in touch with your emotions. You're going to have meaning in some place in your life, and you're going to have to be decisive because decisive people allow other people to understand how to love them. The problem is, if you're a decisive person, everybody's going to develop narratives about you because they got to simplify. Oh, you just like cars. That's all you ever care about. All you ever want is to drink all the time. All you ever do is go fishing. All you ever want to do is buy makeup. All you want to do is hoard. Okay, we love narratives that reinforce it. So decisive people, unfortunately, attract narrative people. What you want to attract, what you want to try to attract and actually care about having in your life is people that see you more holistically. If you want to live a good life, you have to see people holistically. You know, there's all kinds of crucial things that aggregate justifications based on how people conduct their lives. People make bad decisions, people justify bad decisions. What we have to be is more forgiving and understand in this life, the gray area in all of our existence, instead of a narrative and a simple label we want to place on other people, our gray area is our intentions. People that are judgmental and narcissist and people that are borderlines, they love to whack on the outcomes. People that are, antisocial personalities love to beat on outcomes. They love outcomes. They'll just nail them all day long. You did this to me. You did that. You did this. Look at what a horrible person. I can't believe you did this to me. They love to do that. They love it. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you want to get out of the narrative world, a what and a how. How did you decide to make that decision? What happened? What were you thinking? What was going on there? How did you come about this? What were you wanting? What was the result you were looking for? Now we're looking at intentions. That's called forgiveness. And that's where the better part of every human being is going to be, is in forgiveness, in intentions. We have to understand that we live in a world full of justifications and we need to regulate who has access to information. Our information we have to be very careful with because people in this world will take any information that is about you and they will run with it with a narrative because once again people are very impatient. They don't live in communities. They don't care about other people long enough. They don't think about other people long enough. All they want to do is put you in a box, call you a narrative, and always refer to you as that all the time. Like it's interesting. People will go to, let's say, a church and a pastor, and they label the pastor as this. Oh, you're this. You're very, crazy, or you're way out there, or you're very conservative, or you're this, or you're that. And then suddenly they hear a sermon that goes off track. It's not in my box. Oh, you believe that? And all of a sudden you become that, even though the 99.9% of the time you're not that. And that's how people have to simplify everything down to a label. Labels are dangerous, narratives are dangerous, and we humans aren't great at reasoning when we live in narratives. We have a universal desire to find meanings and patterns everywhere. And we are evolutionarily programmed to listen to interpretations based on context rather than content, which means that we're always looking for the nonverbal, we're looking for the tone, we're looking for how you present, what your verbosity is, all these things. We're always reading what the environment we're in. We take in everything and interpret it through all kinds of things. And what is really, really important is it's really hard for a human being to come up with good words. And what we want to do, if we want to be good listeners, is get out of the context and get into the content and try to validate people's words. Okay, so what you're telling me is this. Okay, so I'm hearing you say blah, 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 blah. You stop listening to how they're saying it, and what you listen to is what they're saying. That is the most important part of listening. People ignore that. They have to interpret based on their narratives. And when they hear everything through their narratives, they're hearing it through everything else but your words. And your words are going to also be used to weaponize you, because if any of your words fall into their narrative, now they have evidence that you're that. You're that. We're none of us are all of that. We are some of that, and we're a little bit of that, and we're not that, or we were not interpreted correct. People have to be more patient and listen to each other. It is very, very important. Random events cannot explain why things happen. The urge for explanations is automatic. You know, like, so here's this interesting thing. In the last month, there's been all these plane crashes, all these air traffic events, and it's all blamed because the administration changed. It has nothing to do with the fact that each of those events has their own original cause, and none of them have anything to do with the administration change. But since the administration changed, the price of eggs are decent. It's your fault, even though the last administration is the one that created all the problems. So, it's interesting that we live in these narratives and we have to reinforce them all day long, every day of our lives. And that is a waste of your brain space. It's a waste of your intellect. And it is very, very sad. There is a big difference between intelligent people and people with intellect. Intellect is the person's ability not only to learn, which is intelligence, but intellect is where they're able to apply their learning, and that's wisdom. And many people have high intelligence and a lack of wisdom, a lack of common sense, because they focus on their intellect rather than how to apply what they understand. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come right back. Talk more about narratives. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about narratives and how they destroy our relationships. Psychologists use the term attributions, causes, for people's explanations of events in their lives. And there's even a theory, it's called the attribution theory, and it's about how people answer questions beginning with why. For example, people may make attributions to why their lovers left them, why they're having a problem with their work or their school. And in many cases, casual links are more prevalent in our minds than in reality. And so we manufacture our own reality. And the attributions that people make for an event influence their reactions to it. An alcoholic may be happy to tell himself that he just cannot help it in order to have the excuse of continuing to drink alcohol. Our beliefs are mostly easily swayed when ideas are put into a story. And that's what people invent. They invent a why story, and that's an attribution. And that why story can get really strung out. And what is sad is people will believe their narratives about the story, and they continue to reinforce their narratives about their spouse who divorced them, about someone who left them, about someone at work who destroyed their job or destroyed an opportunity. Our beliefs are really, really very fragile. Generation after generation from the earliest days, our human beings, we human beings have accumulated wisdom to make sense of the world. But that wisdom reverberates between generations. And what that means is each generation, and as generations flow and as life ebbs and flows, we develop different funnels of interpretations. And those interpretations can be very profound. During the 60s, when the hippies came around, they developed a different filter of reality. And then everything had to get filtered through their hippie reality until Johnson pushed us into the Vietnam War because he couldn't stand the hippies. And he wanted to teach them how to actually be responsible human beings. And so guess what? They all ended up going to war. And he didn't destroy, but he changed that generation by doing that. Our brains are so attuned to the narratives that we have to connect the dots into a story, even when the dots aren't connected, which is called narrative bias. And when we're given a snippet of incomplete information, the pattern processing networks between our brains fill the gaps. And that's what we have to do. Our minds can actually take 6 words and turn it into a plot. We picture a scene, a narrative, and a dramatic tension. You know, like a tiger, a hunter, and a child. Now, guess what? You're forming a narrative based on those 6 words. So, and we have to understand, if you assume, what we want to do, if you assume an overall story, but what they begin to do is form a story in their mind. Our brains are clear-cut meaning to limited information. It's so funny. When people start reading a book, they will start forecasting what the end of the book is going to be before they get to the end of the book. And that's half the fun. And then they go, I knew that was going to happen. I knew that. It's because of their narcissistic tendencies to have to form what the story is. Can't you just freaking enjoy the story? But we as human beings can't. We have to have narratives about everything. And then we have to find ways to validate how correct our narratives are. It's really amazing. There's countless generations that have gone through stories that we have had to generate for each other to tolerate our world, to tolerate all the heinous things that have happened. We've had to make excuses for every little thing, and excuses are very far removed from responsibility. If you want to learn, if you want to be wise, you have to take responsibility for what has happened. And by doing that, that's called maturity. Instead, people have to make up stories to excuse what has happened. So when things don't go their way or things don't go down their narrative path, they have to find 5,000 reasons to explain it rather than saying, you know what, that didn't work. We're going to have to rethink this thing because we were wrong. And guess what? We're wrong a lot as human beings. But narratives are the way that we can divert our brain away from the truth, from the accountability, even if it's partial accountability, even if it's taking accountability for the perception that you create. That is important. Mental filter is one of the common distortions that cause you to think negatively. People that are depressed develop negative narratives. People that are anxious develop fear based projections that they have to live in. And if you're going to spend all your time thinking about hypothesis of negative consequences, you're not going to be very effective in this life. And you're sure as hell not going to survive very well. You know, and then guess what? You get to teach your kids how to do that too because you're so good at it. And you just gotta not get change. I'm just too depressed, too anxious. I can't change. You give me a break. It's a thought disorder. Think. Use your head. Actually do something good for yourself. Actually do something good for another human being, and then check in with how you feel. And then you might understand what it takes to not be depressed and not be anxious. You know, pay attention to your assumptions, your internal dialogues, your emotions. This helps you have what's called mental health. You know, noticing something that is not going well and using a positive to take you in a different direction. And that doesn't mean I'm an optimist that you're delusionally optimistic. No. But, life is faith based, not fear based. When fear enters, faith leaves. When faith enters, fear leaves. And I'm not even talking about God here. Faith is how life works. I have faith that if I go to the grocery store, the crack addict isn't going to kill me. I have faith when I get in my car that I'm going to drive safely. I have faith that when we buy this house, we can afford it. I have faith that I can buy this car. I have faith that we're going to have children. I have faith that we're going to get married. I have faith about this new job. I have faith about stepping outside my door. Come on. This is life. It's all faith-based. We have no guarantees. And if you want to live in fear, all you're going to do is spend your life calculating outcomes based on hypothesis. That's called coping. Mental filters create lots of fear. And we have to be really, really careful because if we're going to live in fear, fear creates fight or flight. So that means your brain is going to be very limited down to the brainstem, fight or flight. So you have invented a brain like a lizard. Great. Lovely. If that's what you want to be as a lizard, fight or flight, live in fear and be pragmatic and sit on your butt and never make a decision because indecisive people live in fear, and it's sad. You don't have to live that way. You can always change your mind, make decisions. Decide what you like to have for dinner instead of what do you want to have for dinner. These kind of people are so creepy. Just make a freaking decision. You create some options. We got to get outside of the fear of being judged. People do not think about you that much. And the minute you realize that, the minute you start to discover who am I really, because you don't live apologetically. People, if you're going to give them the power to decipher who you are, you will become what they want you to be rather than who you really are. And guess what? When people hit midlife and realize that nobody ever thinks about them and that they've been inventing a life based on all the narratives of everybody else and what everybody else thought of them and what they wanted everybody else to think, then they blow up and they go marry somebody 20 years younger, get the red Corvette and act like an idiot. That's because they repressed the part of themselves that needed to discover themselves. If you want to live a very productive, clear, wonderful life, then what you want to do is you want to be decisive and change your mind as you adapt to new conditions. We have to overcome mental filtering, which means that we have to be willing to hear people, understand people, even depressed and anxious people, which most people are. We've got to help them filter through that so they can get back to their real selves. But the only way we can help other people, the only way we can influence others, which is all the power we have in this world is to influence, is to have the willingness within ourselves to hear and understand other people, not acknowledge, oh, I can see you're hurting. Oh boy, that must be awful. No, empathy, caring. It really sucks you're in that condition. Is there anything I can do for you? Wow, that must be very difficult to be going through that. You have it in you. Even you crazy autistic people have it in you. You just have to tap into it a little better. You also want to do a cost benefit analysis, and that has to do with weighing out the toxicity. If you've got toxic people in your life, even if they're temporarily toxic, you want to filter them out in influencing your attitude. But if you've got a spouse that's toxic, like the depressed and the anxious ones that have to sit around and bemoan their victim themes, you don't have to buy their victim themes. What you want to do is validate them. You don't have to agree with them. Oh, I can see you're having a really tough time. I can understand how this must be hurting you. It looks like you're having a really tough day. Is there anything I can do for you? I could see that you're really struggling. Is there anything that you want to do for yourself? Is there anything we can do to make life better? I can understand that you're down this path. Is there anything that you're grateful for? Is there anything that you that might make you feel better? Do you think maybe taking a 10-minute walk might help you a little bit since you're 350 pounds and haven't gotten off your butt and stopped watching television for the last 3 days? The deal is we have to understand that if we're going to have a better attitude, if we're going to have less narratives, we also have to exercise our brain, and that's called cardio. Cardio gives your brain oxygen. Oxygen makes your brain work. And that means we have to physically take care of this cavity of a body. But there are millions upon millions, probably billions of people on this planet who live a suicidal life. And that suicidal life has narratives to reinforce it. I'm fat, so I can't do that. I get too tired. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't. Yes, you can. Get off your butt and start working towards something positive. But unfortunately, people have to live in their negative narratives, and that's called a suicidal life. I'm a drug addict. I drink alcohol. You are suicidal. I am fat. I am diabetic. You are suicidal. Lots of people are suicidal and do nothing about it. They just go back to McDonald's and eat 3 more hamburgers, your quarter pounders or Big Macs. Come on, guys. The deal is call reality reality. There are many people that walk among us, people in our lives that live suicidal lives. They're too wimpy to decide when they're going to die. They just want to die. They don't know when they're going to die. I don't know. I guess I'm going to die. They don't know when they're going to die, but they know that they're trying to create an outcome where they're finally dead. Don't deny that. It's really important to understand that. But those people also have very, very strong narratives to keep them in that box. And those narratives about suicidality, about their suicidal life, about their I can't do anything about it attitude is their suicide. It's in their brain. And that has to change. Narratives have to change. So you have to stop consuming junk stories. You have to see the river, not the rocks. You have to expect setbacks and things to happen because things happen all the time. You have to go to good stories about people around you, people that have overcome the obstacles that you had. You're human. We're all human. We've gone through so many things. We have so much history on this planet, and people have overcome the things that you are facing. And that may be mentally overcome. It may not be physical because our bodies are not built to last. So maybe you do have cancer. Maybe you are going to die, but can you take a new attitude towards it? Yes, you can. We want to stay in our life. We want to be resilient and we want to have a good attitude. Gratitude is one of the best ways out of it. That's our show. I want to thank everybody for listening. I love hearing from you. You could do that at voiceamerica.com, the empowerment, the health and wellness channels. And this is Dr. Gary Bell's Absurd Psychology. Now remember, when in doubt, look intelligent. If you want peace, find friends with the same mental disorder. And also, if you're bored, stop taking your meds and see what happens. And if you want to know what God thinks of money,